My name is Rebecca Pappas. I'm 29, and I'm the kind of woman who usually keeps her life neat, folders labeled, emotions filed away, problems solved quietly. I work in IT. Logic is my comfort zone. When something breaks, you troubleshoot. You don't scream at the screen. You don't smash the keyboard. You breathe, you diagnose, you fix. That's why what happened still feels like a glitch in reality, like I woke up inside someone else's nightmare and couldn't find the exit. It's been a few weeks since everything blew up. I know I made the right call. I know I protected myself. And yet sometimes I still catch myself staring at the same spot on the living room wall where it happened, feeling that sharp, frozen disbelief crawl back into my chest. I was engaged to Ethan Caldwell. 4 years together. 4 years of routines that became muscle memory. Sunday grocery runs, late night takeout, inside jokes, the way he'd reach for my hand automatically in crowds like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan was magnetic, marketing guy, confident, charming, the kind of man who could talk his way into a VIP section without a wristband and walk out with 3 new friends and someone's business card tucked in his pocket. When I first met him, that energy felt like sunlight. I liked the way he pulled me out of my head and into the moment. He liked that I was calm, steady, grounded, he used to say, like I was an anchor he was proud to carry, until he started treating that anchor like a weight. The red flags were small at first, not the kind that make you run, the kind you excuse because you're in love. Like the dinner party with my coworkers, where I wore a navy blouse and tailored slacks, simple, professional. Ethan looked me up and down and said, laughing, loud enough for the table to hear, "Babe, you look like you're going to an audit." Everyone chuckled. My face burned. I laughed too, because what else do you do when someone you love turns you into a punchline? Or the way he always picked the restaurant. If I suggested something different, something cheap, something cozy, he'd sigh dramatically and say, "Sure, Rebecca, if you want our date night to feel like a cafeteria." At first, I told myself he was just particular. And I'm not dramatic. I don't like conflict. So I'd compromise. I'd shrug. I'd let it go. But compromise started to feel like a one-way street. Fast forward 4 years, and we're engaged. And wedding planning. Wedding planning isn't just stressful, it's revealing. It strips people down to the raw parts they usually keep hidden. Ethan wanted a wedding that looked like it belonged on a Pinterest board and an Instagram reel. Over 200 guests, a huge venue, elaborate floral arches, custom cocktails with a name that referenced our relationship like we were a brand. He wanted drama, sparkle, spectacle. I wanted something smaller, intimate, manageable, something we could afford without draining our savings. We weren't rolling in money. We had jobs, yes. We were stable, yes. But I didn't want to start a marriage with the kind of debt that sits on your chest like a stone. Every time I brought up budget, he acted like I'd insulted him. "You're acting like this is a business transaction," he'd snap. "This is our wedding, Rebecca. This is supposed to be the most important day of our lives." "I'm not against the wedding," I'd say, trying to keep my voice gentle. "I just want us to be realistic." Realistic. That word became his trigger. One time, we spent 2 hours with the florist debating centerpieces. 2 hours. Shade differences no one would notice unless they brought a microscope. Ethan kept arguing, charming and relentless, until the florist was nodding like a hostage. When I finally said, "Maybe we can simplify this," Ethan turned on me like I'd betrayed him. "If you're not going to take this seriously," he said, voice sharp, "why are you even here?" I'd left work early for that appointment. I'd skipped a team meeting. I'd rushed through traffic. And he still made me feel like I was the problem. It wasn't about compromise, it was about winning. The night everything ended, our living room looked like chaos had taken physical form. Papers everywhere. Contracts, guest lists, budget sheets, sticky notes on the walls like we were solving a crime. Ethan had made a massive binder with tabs and color-coded labels. He'd been obsessing over it for months, like it was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. He paced back and forth in front of the coffee table, talking fast, voice rising, words spilling out in an endless rant about the guest list. "We have to invite my dad's cousins," he insisted. "All of them, and their kids, and their plus ones." I sat on the couch, watching him spin like a storm. I waited for the right moment. "Ethan," I said carefully, "do we really need to invite people we barely know? Shouldn't this be about the people closest to us?" He stopped mid-step. Slowly, he turned to face me. His eyes looked sharp, hard. "Why don't you take this seriously, Rebecca?" he asked. My stomach tightened. I do, I said, keeping my tone even. But the wedding isn't what makes the marriage. We can't afford to invite half the state. His laugh was short and bitter. Realistic, he repeated like it tasted bad. You mean cheap? That's not what I mean, I said, my voice tightening despite myself. I mean, I don't want us to go into debt just so you can impress people we don't even talk to. His face flushed. He stepped closer. You always do this, he snapped. You make me feel like I'm ridiculous for wanting something beautiful. I stood up, frustration finally breaking through my calm. Don't put words in my mouth. I want it to be beautiful too. I just want it to be ours, not some show. His hands curled into fists at his sides. He was trembling, not with fear, but with rage he was trying to dress up as passion. You never hear me, he said. You never actually hear me. For one split second, his voice cracked, and I thought, maybe this is where it softens. Maybe this is where we step back, breathe, reset. I opened my mouth. Ethan, let's just... His hand moved. Fast, hard, no hesitation. The slap landed across my face with a sound that didn't match the room. Loud, final. Everything inside me went quiet. My cheek stung, burning, but the pain was almost distant compared to the shock. I stood there, frozen, staring at the man I was supposed to marry, the man whose ring sat on my finger like a promise, and my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Ethan's expression shifted instantly, from fury to horror. His mouth opened, then closed, like he couldn't find air. Rebecca, he whispered, voice shaking. I didn't mean to, I swear. I wasn't thinking. I didn't speak right away. I could feel my heart pounding, not like panic, but like a warning. Looking back, I can't pretend this came out of nowhere. He'd always been good at verbal jabs, at escalating disagreements until I backed down, at making me feel like peace was something I had to earn by staying quiet. But physical? That was a line I never thought he'd cross. And the moment he did, something in me clicked into place. I touched my cheek lightly, not because I needed to check the damage, but because I needed proof I wasn't imagining it. Then I met his eyes. Pack your things, I said. The calm in my voice surprised even me. His eyes widened. What? Rebecca, no, wait. Stop, I said, holding up my hand. I don't care what your excuse is. You put your hands on me. Tears burst out of him, sudden and frantic. I wasn't thinking. The stress, everything, please. There's nothing to explain, I said, voice quiet but unyielding. You crossed a line I will never tolerate. He tried to move closer. I stepped back. Pack, I repeated, and go. 15 minutes later, he grabbed his bag, hands shaking, eyes locked on me like he expected me to change my mind, like he expected me to soften, like he expected me to do what I always did, smooth it over, swallow it, move on. But I didn't. When the door shut behind him, the silence felt unnatural, heavy. The wedding binder sat open on the coffee table like a cruel joke, pages fluttering slightly from the air he'd left behind. I sank onto the couch, staring at the mess of our almost future scattered across the room. 4 years ended in 15 minutes. And the strangest part? I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just clear. And that clarity came with a cold, nagging thought I couldn't shake. Ethan hadn't just lost control. He'd been trying to make me lose mine. The morning after Ethan left, I woke up to my phone vibrating like it was having a panic attack. Missed calls, texts, notifications stacked on top of each other like unread warnings. For a brief second, still half asleep, I thought something terrible had happened to someone else. Then I remembered. The slap, the door closing, the way the house felt too big and too quiet all at once. I sat up slowly, my cheek still faintly sore, and stared at my phone. Most of the messages were from numbers I recognized. Some I didn't. Word travels fast when a wedding gets canceled overnight. I didn't check Ethan's messages, not yet. I knew what they'd say anyway. I started with my parents. My mom answered on the second ring, cheerful and unaware. Rebecca, I was just about to text you. Did you and Ethan finalize the cake flavor? I closed my eyes and took a breath. Mom, there's no cake. There's no wedding. Silence. Then, softly, what do you mean? I ended it, I said. Ethan moved out last night. Her voice dropped. Rebecca, what happened? I gave her the short version. Not the details, just the line that mattered. He put his hands on me. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. My mother doesn't swear often, but I heard something under her breath that definitely wasn't polite. Oh, she said finally. Oh, honey. The disappointment disappeared instantly, replaced by something steadier, protective. I did the right thing, I said, not because she doubted me, but because I needed to hear myself say it out loud. You absolutely did, she replied. Your father will back you. We both do. Whatever you need. Space, company, silence, we're here. After we hung up, I felt lighter. Just a little. Enough to move on to the next thing on my list. Canceling the wedding. Calling vendors is a special kind of emotional torture. Everyone is polite, sympathetic, careful not to say the wrong thing. I'm so sorry to hear that, the venue coordinator said. We'll need to talk about the deposit. Keep it, I replied without hesitation. I don't want it back. The photographer, the caterer, the DJ. Each call peeled off another layer of the life I'd planned, and by the time I was done, I felt wrung out. Empty, but also strangely relieved. That's when the texts from Ethan started coming in. At first, they were apologetic. Long paragraphs, too many words, too many excuses. I wasn't thinking. I lost control. The stress got to me. I would never hurt you. Then the tone shifted. You're really throwing everything away over one mistake? 4 years, Rebecca. 4 years. You're being dramatic. By the end of the day, the guilt-tripping kicked in. Everyone's asking what happened. You're ruining my life. How am I supposed to explain this? I didn't respond to a single message. What was there to say? He knew exactly what he'd done. The next wave came from friends. Some were solid. My friend Maya came over that evening with takeout and 0 questions, just sat next to me on the couch like a silent anchor. Others called to check in, their voices heavy with curiosity they tried and failed to disguise as concern. And then there were the ones who chose sides. Ethan's friend group had always orbited around him, but I hadn't expected the speed at which the narrative flipped. By the 3rd day, I started seeing vague posts on social media. Some people can't handle a passionate partner. Funny how stress is only an excuse when it benefits one side. Imagine throwing away a future because you can't control your emotions. No names, no tags. But it was obvious. The loudest voice belonged to Sophie, Ethan's female friend, the one he'd always insisted was basically a sister, the one who hugged him a little too long and laughed a little too hard at his jokes. She posted things like, "Strong men get punished for having feelings," and "Not everyone is built for real commitment." I stared at my screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. Then I locked my phone and set it down. Engaging would only give her what she wanted. What bothered me more than the posts was how coordinated it felt, like a script everyone had agreed on without me. Ethan was stressed. Ethan was overwhelmed. Ethan was the victim of a woman who overreacted. No one mentioned the slap. No one asked if I was okay. Ethan's parents called on the 4th day. His mother cried, said he'd been under so much pressure, that he loved me, that he'd made a mistake. I told her calmly, I'm not marrying someone who thinks violence is acceptable. She didn't argue after that, just sighed and said she understood, even if I could hear the disappointment lingering underneath. His father's call was colder. People are talking, Rebecca, he said. This is going to follow you. I'm more concerned with my safety than my reputation, I replied. He hung up shortly after. By the end of the week, I was exhausted in a way sleep didn't fix. Not heartbroken, just drained. Carrying everyone else's opinions felt heavier than the breakup itself. Then the rumors escalated. Someone, most likely Sophie, started suggesting I'd exaggerated what happened. That Ethan had raised his hand defensively. That I'd pushed his buttons. A mutual acquaintance texted, "You didn't really kick him out over one argument, did you?" I deleted the message without replying. Despite all the noise, the house felt peaceful. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no bracing myself before speaking. And yet, something about Ethan's reaction didn't sit right with me. He wasn't acting like someone who'd lost control and regretted it. He was acting like someone angry his plan hadn't worked. The way he shifted from apology to blame, so fast. The way he focused more on how I reacted than on what he did. The way he seemed obsessed with controlling the narrative. It didn't feel like guilt. It felt like panic. That thought stayed with me, scratching at the back of my mind, until Lena called. Lena is one of those people who always knows more than she says. Blunt, honest, not interested in drama unless it's unavoidable. Her voice on the phone was hesitant, which immediately put me on edge. "Rebecca," she said, "are you free to talk?" "Yeah," I replied slowly. "What's up?" She paused. "Not over the phone. Can we meet?" My stomach tightened. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place that smells like burnt espresso and old books. Lena was already there, sitting in a corner booth, coffee untouched in front of her. She looked uncomfortable. That's when I knew. This wasn't about comfort or support. This was about information. I slid into the seat across from her. "Okay," I said. "What is it?" She exhaled. "I didn't want to get involved, but after everything that's being said about you, I can't stay quiet." My hands curled around my mug. Say it. It's about Ethan, she said, and Sophie. My chest tightened. What about them? Lena lowered her voice. A friend of mine saw them together, at a bar, weeks ago. I didn't speak. They weren't just talking, she continued. They were holding hands, kissing. The cafe noise faded into a dull hum. I felt strangely calm, like the last piece of a puzzle had just snapped into place. Lena reached into her bag. She took a photo. She didn't want to cause drama, but after what you went through... She slid her phone across the table. The image was grainy, blurry, but unmistakable. Ethan's arm around Sophie's waist, her hand flat against his chest, their faces close enough to erase any doubt. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I pushed the phone back. That explains everything, I said quietly. Lena blinked. You're not angry? Oh, I am, I replied, just not surprised. Because suddenly it all made sense. The picking fights, the pressure, the slap. He hadn't lost control. He'd been cornered by his own lies. And that meant the story wasn't over yet. Not even close. I stayed at that cafe long after Lena left. My coffee went cold. The chatter around me blurred into background noise. I kept replaying the image in my head, not the photo itself, but everything it explained. The tension, the sudden irritability, the way Ethan had seemed almost desperate for an argument that night. I wasn't dealing with a man who snapped under stress. I was dealing with a man who had already stepped outside the relationship and needed a reason to make me the villain. The slap hadn't been random. It had been a shortcut. I drove home slowly, gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary, not because I was angry, but because I was focused, clear in a way I hadn't been in weeks. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I planned. I wasn't going to confront him immediately. I wanted to see how far he'd go if I stayed silent, how long he'd keep rewriting the story if he thought I didn't know the truth. It didn't take long. His texts ramped up again, less apologetic now, more confident. We should talk like adults. This is getting blown way out of proportion. I don't know what Sophie's been telling people, but she's just trying to help. That one almost made me laugh. By the third day, I was ready. I texted him one line. We need to talk. Come by tomorrow at 7. He replied within seconds. I knew you'd calm down. Thank you. We can fix this. I didn't answer. The next evening, I cleared the living room. No clutter, no wedding papers, just the coffee table, wiped clean, except for one thing, a printed photo. I placed it dead center, perfectly aligned, like evidence in a courtroom. At exactly 7 p.m., there was a knock. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there, holding a bouquet of flowers I recognized immediately, the kind I'd once mentioned liking in passing years ago. He smiled like he was stepping back into familiar territory. You look good, he said. I'm glad you reached out. I stepped aside without responding. He walked in confidently, stopping short when he saw the coffee table. What's this? He asked, picking up the photo. The color drained from his face. Where did you get this? He demanded. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Does it matter? His jaw tightened. This isn't what it looks like. I waited. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Sophie is just a friend, he said finally. Someone must have misunderstood. I tilted my head. Then explain it. His eyes flicked back to the photo. He swallowed. I was overwhelmed, he said. The wedding, the pressure, you were pulling away. So you cheated, I replied calmly. He bristled. It wasn't cheating. I pushed off the wall and took a step closer. You were engaged. You were kissing another woman. What do you call that? His voice rose. I didn't plan for it to happen. But it did, I said. And instead of owning it, you picked fights. You pushed. You escalated until I became the problem. He scoffed. You're twisting things. No, I said softly. I'm finally seeing them clearly. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through his charm. You weren't perfect either, Rebecca. You were cold, always talking about budgets like feelings don't matter. And that justified lying? I asked. Sneaking around? Slapping me? The word slapping landed hard. He froze. I didn't mean to... But you did, I cut in. And now I know why. He stared at me, expression tightening. Why? Because you wanted me to explode, I said. You wanted me to scream, to hit back, to do something you could point to and say, see, she's unstable. His silence answered for him. You needed an exit, I continued. One where you weren't the bad guy. And when I didn't give it to you, you lost control. His shoulders slumped slightly. I messed up, he said quietly. I know I did. But we can fix this. I shook my head. Fix what? The trust, the relationship. You can't fix something you didn't respect in the first place, I said. This isn't a mistake. This is a pattern. His frustration snapped back. So that's it? You're throwing away 4 years over this? I met his eyes, steady and unmoved. No, you threw it away. I just stopped carrying it. He stepped toward me, reaching out instinctively. I stepped back. Don't, I said. He stopped, his face crumpling. I'm sorry. I nodded once. Good, now leave. He hesitated, then grabbed his jacket, his confidence completely gone. At the door, he turned back. You didn't have to do it like this. Yes, I said quietly. I did. The door closed behind him, and this time, there was no doubt. I hadn't just ended an engagement. I'd escaped something much worse. And karma? Karma was already warming up. The weeks after Ethan walked out of my life felt strangely quiet. Not empty, quiet. The house settled into a rhythm that didn't revolve around anticipating someone else's moods. I woke up when I wanted, ate when I wanted, spoke without calculating how my words might be twisted into an argument. The silence wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I threw myself back into work. Late-night debugging sessions, morning runs, dinners with friends I hadn't seen enough of while planning a wedding that never should have happened. Little by little, I started feeling like myself again. Not the version of me that constantly compromised, but the one who trusted her instincts. I hadn't heard much about Ethan, and I wasn't looking. But the universe has a way of delivering updates whether you ask for them or not. It was Maya who called first, her voice barely holding back laughter. You're not going to believe this, she said. What? I asked, already bracing myself. He moved in with Sophie. I paused. That was fast. Wait, she continued. It gets better. Apparently, Ethan and Sophie had gone public almost immediately. Social media posts, smiling photos, captions about finally choosing happiness and toxic relationships being left behind. The same people who'd questioned my boundaries suddenly went quiet. And then, almost on cue, the whole thing imploded. Ethan didn't just get cheated on. He got cheated on loudly. Sophie had been seeing someone else from her gym. For weeks. Ethan found out the hard way, by walking in on them. According to Maya, the confrontation ended with Sophie's bags tossed onto the lawn and a neighbor filming the entire thing. The video made its rounds online. I watched it once. Ethan stood there, red-faced, yelling while Sophie cried and begged. It was messy, public, humiliating. I didn't feel satisfaction the way I expected to. I felt confirmation. That chaos? That pattern of self-destruction? It hadn't started with me. People started reaching out again. Apologies this time. Awkward messages that danced around accountability. I guess we didn't know the whole story. You were right to leave. I kept my responses brief. I'm doing well. Hope you are too. That was the truth. Months passed. Life moved forward. Then one night, almost 10 months after the slap, there was a knock on my door. It was late, close to 10 p.m. I opened it and found Ethan standing there. He looked different, thinner, tired, hair unkempt, eyes rimmed red like sleep hadn't been a priority in a long time. The confident man who once filled every room had shrunk into someone barely holding himself together. Rebecca, he said quietly, please, I just need to talk. No, I replied, already stepping back. He caught the doorframe. Please, just a minute. Against my better judgment, I listened. He told me about therapy, about realizing his mistakes, about losing everything, about how Sophie was gone, about how he finally understood what he'd done to me. I've changed, he said, tears spilling over. I swear I have. I studied him carefully. This wasn't remorse. This was loneliness. Ethan, I said calmly, I don't doubt you're struggling, but change isn't something you announce when you're desperate. It's something you prove over time, away from the person you hurt. He sank back defeated. I don't have anyone else. I met his eyes, steady and unmoved. That's not my responsibility. He nodded slowly, finally understanding there was no opening left to force. I'm sorry, he whispered. I nodded once. Good. Then I closed the door. And that was it. No dramatic reconciliation, no last kiss, no second chance. Just a woman choosing herself without guilt, without hesitation. Because self-respect isn't negotiable. And once someone